Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mr. Schaefer Reads. Put on the closed captions, read along with me, and the outer rind on your brain. I don't know if it's called the cerebrum or the cerebellum, but it will become toned and rippled and strong. And your brain will become so strong that it will mess with people's cell service as they walk by you. So read along with me, please. Please, people are running around screaming about this literacy crisis. And so my idea, if you read along with me for 10 to 20 minutes a night, boom, problem solved. Put the closed captions on. This is the third story of The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, 1844. The flower garden of the woman skilled in magic. How did little Gerda get along when Kay did not come back? Where could he be? Nobody knew. Nobody could give them any news of him. All that the boys could say was that he had seen him hitch his little sled to a fine big sleigh, which had driven down the street and out through the town gate. Nobody knew what had become of Kay. Many tears were shed, and little Gerda sobbed hardest of all. People said that he was dead, and that he must have been drowned in the river not far from town. Oh, how gloomy those long winter days were. But spring and its warm sunshine came at last. Kay is dead and gone, little Gerda said. I don't believe it, said the sunshine. He's dead and gone, she said to the swallows. We don't believe it either, they said. Finally, little Gerda began to disbelieve it too. One morning she said to herself, I'll put on my new red shoes, the one Kay has never seen, and I'll go down to the river and ask about him. It was very early in the morning. She kissed her old grandmother, who was still asleep, put on her red shoes, and all by herself she hurried out through the town gate and down to the river. Is it true that you have taken my own little playmate? I'll give you my red shoes if you will bring him back to me. It seemed to her that the waves nodded very strangely, so she took off her red shoes, which were her dearest possession, and threw them into the river. But they fell near the shore, and the little waves washed them right back to her. It seemed that the river could not take her dearest possession because it did not have little Kay. However, she was afraid that she had not thrown them far enough. So she clambered into a boat that lay among the reeds, walked to the end of it, and threw her shoes out into the water again. But the boat was not tied, and her movements made it drift away from the bank. She realized this and tried to get ashore, but by the time she reached the other end of the boat, it was already more than a yard from the bank and fast gaining speed. Little Gerda was so frightened that she began to cry, and no one was there to hear her except the sparrows that flew overhead. They could not carry her to land, but they flew along the shore, twittering, "We are here! We are here!" as if to comfort her. The boat drifted swiftly down the stream, and Gerda sat there quite still, in her stocking feet. Her little red shoes floated along behind, but they could not catch up with her because the boat was gathering headway. It was very pretty on both sides of the river, where the flowers were lovely, the trees were old, and the hillsides afforded pasture for cattle and sheep. But not one single person did Gerda see. Perhaps the river will take me to little Kay, she thought, and that made her feel more cheerful. She stood up and watched the lovely green banks for hour after hour. Then she came to a large cherry orchard in which there was a little house with strange red and blue windows in it. It had a thatched roof, and outside it stood 2 wooden soldiers who presented arms to everyone who sailed past. Gerda thought that they were alive and called out to them, but of course they did not answer her. She drifted quite close to them as the currents drove the boat toward the bank. Gerda called even louder, and an old woman came out of the house. She leaned on a crooked stick and had one big sun hat, and on it were painted the most glorious flowers.
You poor little girl,
the old woman exclaimed.
How did you ever get lost on the big swift river? And however did you drift so far into this great wide world?
The old woman waded right into the water, caught hold of the boat with her crooked stick and pulled it into shore and lifted little Gerda out of it. Gerda was very glad to be on dry land again, and she felt a little afraid of this strange old woman who said to her,
Come and tell me who you are and how you got here.
Gerda told her all about it. The old woman shook her head and said,
yes.
When Gerda had told her everything and asked if she hadn't seen little Kay, the old woman said that he had not come by, but that he might be along any day now. And she told Gerda not to take it so to heart, but to taste her cherries and to look at her flowers. These were more beautiful than any picture book, and each one had a story to tell. Then she led Gerda by the hand into her little house, and the old woman locked the door. The windows were placed high up on the wall, and through their red, blue, and yellow panes the sunlight streamed in a strange mixture of all the colors there. But on the table were the most delicious cherries, and Gerda, who was no longer afraid, ate as many as she liked. While she was eating them, the old woman combed her hair with a golden comb. Gerda's pretty hair fell in shining yellow ringlets on either side of a friendly little face that was as round and blooming as a rose.
I've so often wished for a dear little girl like you, the old woman told her. Now you'll see how well the two of us get along.
While her hair was being combed, Gerda gradually forgot about Kay, for the old woman was magical. But this old woman wanted very much to keep little Gerda. So she went out into her garden and pointed her crooked stick at all the rose bushes. In the full bloom of their beauty, all of them sank down into the black earth without leaving a single trace behind them. The old woman was afraid that if Gerda saw them, they would remind her so strongly of her own roses and of little Kay that she would run away again. Then Gerda was led into the little flower garden. How fragrant and lovely it was. Every known flower of every season was in full bloom. No picture book was ever so pretty and gay. Gerda jumped for joy and played in the garden until the sun went down behind the tall cherry tree. Then she was tucked into a beautiful bed under a red silk coverlet quilted with blue violets. There she slept, and there she dreamed as gloriously as any queen on her wedding day. The next morning, she again went out into the warm sunshine to play with the flowers, and this she did for many a day. Gerda knew every flower by heart, and plentiful though they were, she always felt that there was one missing, but which one she didn't quite know. One day, she sat looking at the old woman's sun hat, and the prettiest of all the flowers painted on it was a rose. The old woman had forgotten this rose on her hat when she made the real roses disappear in the earth. But that's just the sort of thing that happens when one doesn't stop to think. "Why aren't there any roses here?" said Gerda. She rushed out among the flower beds, and she looked and looked, but there wasn't a rose to be seen. There she sat down and cried, but her hot tears fell on the very spot where a rose bush had sunk into the ground, and when her warm tears moistened the earth, the bush sprang up again, as full of blossoms as when it disappeared. Gerda hugged it and kissed the roses. She remembered her own pretty roses and thought of little Kay. "Oh, how long have I been delayed?" the little girl said. "I should have been looking for Kay. Don't you know where he is?" she asked the roses. "Do you think that he is dead and gone?" "He isn't dead," the roses told her. "We've been down in the earth where the dead people are, and we've looked around, but Kay is not here." "Thank you," said little Gerda, who went to all the other flowers, put her lips near them, and asked, "Do you know where little Kay is?" But every flower stood in the sun and dreamed its own fairy tale, or its story. Though Gerda listened to many, many of them, not one of the flowers knew anything about Kay. What did the tiger lily say? "Do you hear the drum? Boom, boom. It was only two notes, always boom, boom. Hear the woman wail." Oh, that's a weird one. I'm going to skip that. "That's my fairy tale," said the lily. What did the trumpet flower say? "An ancient castle rises high from the narrow path in the mountains. The thick ivy grows leaf upon leaf where it climbs to the balcony. There stands a beautiful maiden. She leans over the balustrade to look down the path. No rose on its stem is as graceful as she, nor is any apple blossom in the breeze so light. Hear the rustle of her silk gown sighing, 'Will he never come?'" And this story will be continued in the next video, lest I hit the time limit.